There's an online shopping invasion from China, and we've been too blind to notice it. Welcome to China Insider. I'm Zhang. This is the port of Shanghai where millions of dollars worth of exports each single day leave China for the US and worldwide. But if you buy a $2 iPhone case from Temu, an online shopping site, chances are it is on the plane in 2 days and arrived at your doorstep within a week or so. And this is where it comes from, Shenzhen, the hub of e-commerce in China. Here, millions of insanely low-priced goods are wrapped and stamped for America, Canada, and wherever else the consumers are taking and grabbing their credit cards, paying on sites like Wish.com, Temu, or on AliExpress. That $2 iPhone case is a small process in a massive shopping conquest that China has been launching in the past decade or so. And the goal is to get you addicted to cheap Chinese products and continue to buy and rely on them. And it's working. Before we go on, please subscribe to our channel and like this video. Also comment below what your thoughts are on today's topic. Have you been seeing these ads lately? Horrible and annoying advertisement with bad actors playing as bosses and employees wondering why no one wants to buy their cheap products. That's from Temu, the #1 downloaded free app on the Apple App Store right now. Up there at the top 6, you have TikTok, Shein, and CapCut along with Temu. 4 out of the 6 are Chinese apps. From February to March this year, the top 4 apps downloaded on the App Store are from China. Temu launched last September as the overseas version of Pinduoduo, and its February Super Bowl commercial with the tagline, quote, "Shop like a billionaire," sparked a flurry of interest. Discounted prices for a range of products from apparel to electronics are the main draw. And for $1.84, you get a pair of headphones that look like top brands. Or this, for $2.59 with free shipping, you can get a knockoff pair of AirPods. Even if you bought 10 pairs of these, it's still 10 times cheaper than the actual AirPods. Free shipping, fast delivery, functional at 1/10 of the price? That seems too good to be true. Well, to be fair, some of them have pretty good quality, like Anchor products, which I also use, but most of them are actually cheap knockoffs that break within a month. This is the strategy of Temu, a shopping app, and in China it's called Pinduoduo. Google has since shelved the Chinese version of the app, citing security concerns. According to cybersecurity researchers, Pinduoduo app can bypass users' cell phone security to monitor activities on other apps, check notifications, read private messages, and even change settings. Now, maybe you haven't heard about Temu. What about Wish.com? That's a US-based e-commerce site that sells pretty much the same cheap products from China. The same kind of t-shirt appears on multiple different websites. AliExpress, DHgate, Light in the Box, all of them are e-commerce sites with products mainly from China. They offer equally low prices and most of the time free shipping on items from China. Cheap to the point where they wouldn't be profitable. Not only are the product quality pretty bad, but they're also likely made with toxic materials. Today, though, going to Walmart might get you better quality products from China than those that are on these websites. But that's not all. There's also Shein, a massive online fashion brand. In this new industry of fashion, fast fashion, they're dominating the shopping trend of young people today. Shein has reportedly set a significant full-year revenue growth target of $58.5 billion in 2025. That's up from the $22.7 billion it had reported last year. It's a booming business model that has changed the fashion industry for consumers. For $6, you can get a dress or a pair of pants. Most people are attracted to the price tag and don't spend the necessary effort to determine where the company comes from or where the company is based. And also, even if it is from China, the excuse is often, well, it's cheap enough for me to buy, and even if it breaks within a few months, well, it's pretty cheap. Shein also could surpass retail giants like H&M and Zara combined within the next few years. Meanwhile, the Wall Street Journal noticed that Temu will probably only account for a fraction of Pinduoduo's total revenue in the near future, and it will also likely be unprofitable as the company is offering generous subsidies and discounts to grow fast, just as Pinduoduo did to take over market share from the big players in China at the beginning. That's the key, selling cheap to take market share. However, in this case, the market share will be the death of small businesses in the United States and elsewhere. And that's China's economic invasion. The strategy using cheap goods to conquer consumers, to build reliance on Chinese products, drive away the domestic competition, and establish dominance. They use low-quality materials, sometimes even toxic, to make these cheap knockoff headphones or otherwise. Products of all sorts are made this way. Aside from the obvious environmental pollution that comes with it, which China also ignores, what about the awful smell? Anybody that has purchased something from China probably knows that when you open the package, man, that chemical smell. Meanwhile, they hire workers for cents per hour and force them to work 16-hour days to make the clothes that people in the US and elsewhere buy from Shein. Or in some cases, they just simply use slave labor of minorities like the Uyghurs or prisoners of conscience inside prison camps. Well, that's why it's so cheap. Now, it's also a little bit more complex than that. China actually has a whole strategy for economic displacement of businesses in other countries. Let's first talk about the CCP's role in currency manipulation. What they do is they let the yuan drop and deflate the price of yuan so that the price of goods will remain cheap. For example, the $2 headphones can continue to be so cheap because China artificially made the value of it so cheap. By deflating the yuan, it allows products to be bought from China in greater quantity, as you can spend the same amount of US dollars and you will buy double or triple the amount of products from China just because the currency exchange is so much better for the dollar and not the yuan. And of course, we know that China is a developing country by status, which means that they have a lot of different treatments given to them, these special exemptions for the sake of developing their economy. And that's right, the second largest economy in the world is a developing country. That's why there's a bill in Congress right now, and it's already passed the House, which would stop recognizing China as a developing country. And because of that, other nations actually subsidize China's shipping, which is with US Postal Service or in other countries, different postal services. They actually basically allow China to ship everything for free. That's why you get things from China for free. Now, since the 1980s, factories have essentially moved all of their manufacturing production out of the United States to China because of cheap labor. Since they can make everything in China, whatever gets manufactured gets sold back to the US for a decently cheaper price than domestic products. So then, to get things that are not as important for, say, daily use, consumers would go to places like Walmart or Target. They could get cups, they could get a lamp, or they could get a kettle, or maybe even something to cook rice with. Things that are made in China for a very cheap price. But then things started to change with the rise of e-commerce. China started to revolutionize its approach to manufacturing and delivering products to the US and elsewhere. Why not just make our own websites and cater to those that want Chinese goods? We skip Walmart, we skip Target. So you have to understand that China has a state-backed tax return program for exports. When Chinese exporters go to customs and they have to pay tariffs on their goods, the government in China will refund the cost of the tariff for these people that make the export. Now, in a normal economy following free trade rules, if you import a product, say from Germany, a German car like BMW, you pay a tariff of a certain percentage on that car. And that's when it's reflected in the price of the car when you go buy it in the US. It will likely be more expensive to buy that same car here in the United States than in Germany if the car is imported. Now, the same thing applies to other goods, say lumber. If I can get lumber in Canada for, say, $2 for a 2x4, then in the US, maybe I'll have to pay $3 for the same size of the lumber because we have to account for import. China does the opposite. Now, if you buy a $2 headphone, that means the cost of that headphone is actually $2, the same price that you can buy in China, if not cheaper. Over time, cheap goods flooded the market and they forced out domestic competitors, mainly small and medium businesses, because simply the price for them to create that product is already 10 times more than the selling price of something from China. Now, simply because small businesses just couldn't compete with the price from China, that's why over time we saw the phenomenon that local stores, they ran out of business. Things are sold at fraction of the price from China. That's why when there was the Trump trade war, you saw the increase in tariffs on certain goods, say to 200%. It actually protected small business owners because they can now compete with the same fair prices as people from China, because now the Chinese tariffs are so high. America's manufacturing decline, in my view, is actually largely correlated to the rise of China's manufacturing, especially after 1980s, because that's when China started to open up. Now, here's a great example of how China used cheap prices as a strategy to invade another country. Huawei, the Chinese telecom company, offers bidding price for the telecom infrastructure in many of European countries at a much cheaper price point than their competitors, to the point where the competitors couldn't even match the offer because it's just so low that the competitors would not make any money. But in the case of Huawei, they were losing money to get into that country's network and infrastructure. Of course, Huawei is a spy company that wants to infiltrate the communications network in that country. But the concept is that the CCP backs Huawei with grants and special exemptions, providing them with the ability to bid prices that low. So back in the 3G era, which is around, I think, 2007 to 2010, Huawei was in many countries' 3G network, so they established the grounds for 3G. And later, when 4G came out, the reliance is already there, so they naturally upgraded to Huawei equipment for 4G. And then when the 5G equipments came out, they naturally then upgraded to the 5G networks. In this case, basically China helped to create reliance on Chinese products in a country. Because to China, making money isn't actually the priority. It's about flooding the market first with low-priced goods and then drive away the competition, which then they can write the rules of the game. And so that's why World Trade Organization and many of the countries have repeatedly condemned China's malpractice in fair and free trade, because they just don't play by the rules. They want to dominate and change the game. And the same thing is happening on Amazon. You can find Chinese products in almost every category. And often when you go search for a product, let's say something like a spatula or even headphones, chances are many of that product actually come from China. Thanks to China's freewheeling approach to trade counterfeiting and consumer protection standards, China-based sellers on Amazon have developed a reputation for issues with quality and customer service that Amazon seems to constantly have to try to stamp out. But Amazon sellers from China at one point actually accounted for almost 60% of the total sellers. And according to the Wall Street Journal in 2019, they uncovered thousands of banned, unsafe, or mislabeled products in Amazon's catalog, most of which come from China. And it also because it became apparent that Amazon sellers were actually trying to game with Amazon's algorithms so that their listings would get as high of a search as possible. Usually the results come up first or second. And they even went as far as bribing Amazon employees in China to help boost items' rank. Amazon says the company spent more than $900 million in 2020 to combat counterfeiting, fraud, and other abuse, but so far Chinese sellers still dominate many item search lists. Now, when the war over counterfeit and low prices finish, Chinese sellers will probably just move on to sites like Temu or Wish.com, where they're actually given freedom to promote whatever knockoff products or bad quality products they're selling. And that's basically what's happening now. So we really need to solve the root of the problem, which a part of it is the way that China has invaded by changing our consumer habits. They want us to rely on cheap, bad quality, but readily available Chinese products, to the point where we basically no longer shop offline, where you can buy anything, right? We used to buy everything from Amazon. Now we say that Amazon's even too expensive. Let me just buy it from China. And because of that, that's reliance. And that's something we have to get away from, especially from these Chinese cheap products. And the current state of the Chinese economy, I think, is also problematic for their future of e-commerce, because companies are moving away from China, and the current economic problems are causing many factories to go out of jobs because the orders are not coming in as often as they used to. Domestic consumption is also down. People are just afraid to spend money as they fear that the Communist Party policies, like the 3 years of zero COVID, could come back. And so these are impactful for the next step of what Chinese manufacturing would look like, and in turn, what export to the US would look like. Largely because of geopolitics, I think the dominance of China in these products will change, hopefully for the better. All right, that's it for today. Thank you so much for watching China Insider. And before we go, make sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video to help push the video to the YouTube algorithm so more people can see it. And also comment below what your thoughts are on the topic today. And if you do use social media like Instagram, Facebook, or even Twitter, I do have profiles there. So make sure to give me a follow on these social media sites. And once again, I'm David Zhang. This is China Insider. We'll see you next time.